Hello and welcome. You're watching The Social Network on NDTV 24/7. In the wake of the Spotgate scandal and the arrests of 3 IPL cricketers, the focus is now turning to the web of deceit and conspiracy that extends a lot further than these 3 faces that have come to be associated with it. When the Delhi police yesterday talked about the mastermind pulling the strings from abroad, the question on everyone's mind, how can the sports world be extricated from the claws of the insidious underworld? One of the alternatives offered, legalizing betting. Now, ensure checks and balances, ensure regulation, but can it realistically be implemented? That is what we are discussing today. And joining us on Skype, Badri Sheshadri, the co-founder of Crick Info, Arjun Devan, High Court lawyer, also with me here in studio, as well as Dilip Premachandran, the editor-in-chief of Wisdom India. Thank you, all of you, for speaking with us. Dilip, let me first go to you and get the ball rolling. Betting, there's been a long debate. About 3 years ago, the Ministry of Sports very seriously thought about legalizing betting in India. They looked at the kind of model and then they dropped it on the wayside, saying they felt that it wouldn't fit in with the way India morally approached betting and gambling. That, at this point, seems to be a rather specious specious argument, because clearly we are doing it.
Yeah, the moral argument is something I've never agreed with. I find it frankly ridiculous. You're talking about a country where millions of rupees are wagered every year during card games that you have at Diwali, and nobody has any moral issues about that. When it comes to gambling on sport, apparently it becomes something different. But if you're talking about the actual problem, I don't think legalizing betting solves match fixing, because betting is legal in England, it's legal in the US. Baseball has had betting scandals. European football is investigating 700 corrupt matches over the last few years. So even countries where betting is legal, you still have the same problem. There is no end to human greed.
Right. So the problem, of course, exists, and the question, of course, is the penalization as far as betting is concerned. If you don't legalize it, then somebody who is caught betting can actually be punished. Arjun, so that is something that is taken into account, but we almost never see it happening, do we?
Yeah, almost hardly any arrests in India for a person participating in betting. Where it comes down to the act which controls betting, which is the Gambling Control Act in 1867. If a person who even enters a premises where gambling activity is happening, he can be prosecuted over there. In India, as of right now, there is no law which allows any kind of gambling. Gambling is a state subject, and as of right now, if you look at this way, Goa and Sikkim both allow gambling in India. And as my earlier preceding person commented, gambling has been looked as a very morally immoral activity, right from the ancient India, as well as in the Supreme Courts in their judgments have said it to be, and a very immoral activity we cannot pursue with it.
Right. So I think it seems that legally nobody actually talks about it. It is brushed under the carpet. Badri, let's talk about cricket in particular, because I don't think we have any doubt that this is where the most money goes. It is big business, it's big bucks, and therefore, of course, this is where everyone wants to bet on.
Is that question for me?
The reason why a lot of people want to get into this illegal betting whole web of
Badri, we'll come back to you in a moment. Dilip, let me toss that question to you. Clearly, cricket is going to be the big issue because it is the most watched sport. It is the sport in which there is most money in India, and therefore it is where we are going to see the biggest scandals like the one we just seen.
See, if you legalize betting, there are 2 sides to this, like I said earlier. If you legalize betting, you do cut down on the profits that the underworld makes from it, because there may be a few people who are tempted to bet legally, but and at the same time the government makes a lot of money from that, because you'll obviously tax winnings. So that's a good way to generate some money for the government as well. But at the same time, you're not going to stop people who don't want to pay taxes going to the same shady bookmaker down some back alley who has connections with Dubai or Karachi or Bombay or wherever else, and placing their bets illegally. You can't stop that.
And I think not only can you not stop that, it is exactly how the system is going to work the more interior you go. In the big cities, perhaps you can ensure a monitoring system, but when you go to the small towns, it's the local bookies that are going to be working.
You know, I did a story on this a few years ago, and one of the things I discovered was that soon after the match fixing scandal in 2000, most of the bookies went to the interior, like you just said. The gambling centers shifted from Bombay and other big cities to places like Jaipur, Nagpur, Hyderabad, and bookies set up shop there. And some of the biggest names in the bookmaking industry in India right now are in those cities. If you want to bet on Australian matches, there's a guy in Hyderabad. There's somebody else who's a specialist for England, I think, based in Jaipur. There are all sorts of networks all around the country, not necessarily in tier 1 cities.
Well, Arjun, I think that when we talk about that, let's go back to an issue you just brought up, which is that gambling, betting is still a state subject. To ensure that you legalize it first, it has to be made a national issue.
Yes, absolutely. But as you look in the current scenario, but firstly I'd like to point out that as we're saying that down in the villages and everything, how do we control that? In the current system, in the Goa Act, land casinos are allowed only open to be in 5-star hotels. It is not allowed all throughout the territory to be open at any instance.